Hi, I'm Tyler Davidson, Chief Content Director of Meetings Focus. Thank you for joining us today for our live broadcast from the PSAV Inspiration Cafe at PCMA's Convening Leaders Conference here in San Diego. And I'm gathered here with a very distinguished panel of veteran meeting planners. The couple on the end I've worked with for years and gained lots of insight and advice from. And then Maribeth here, I've just met her, so I'm happy to have her along. And let me introduce them all to you. We have Maribeth T. Krause, who is the Director of Convention Programs for the Modern Language Association of America. Thank you for joining us. Charles Massey, who is the President and CEO of Synaxis Meetings and Events in Southern California here. Thank you, Charles.
Thanks, Tyler.
And Joan Eisenstadt, who I'm sure many of you are familiar with, who is the moderator of our Meetings Focus Forum, as well as Chief Strategist of Eisenstadt Associates, LLC. And I'm glad I frequently get that wrong, so I'm glad I got it right today.
And remember, it's Washington, D.C., where there's taxation without representation. Just had to get that in.
Always good to get that in. Thanks for joining us. And, you know, when we thought up this program, we were thinking, what better way to just give tips to people, you know, who are maybe starting out or even been doing this for a little while, from planners who have been doing it for a long time. So thanks for joining us. And I think, you know, they have, I tasked them with coming up with some great tips they've learned through their careers. And we also asked questions of you and gave you the opportunity to submit some. So we were talking before the broadcast today, and we thought, why not just start it off with some questions from the audience? So we'll do that. So let's start off with and being an independent planner and promoting oneself. This one is from Charnel. So as an independent planner, what's the best way to market yourself?
You want to take that one?
Yeah, I'll start with that, and maybe Charles will jump in on that. What's interesting about this is that I started my business in 1981, and when I did so, nobody was using the internet, so there certainly wasn't that. But I learned to do a lot of public speaking at MPI and PCMA chapter meetings, at ASAE meetings, and I also did a lot of writing, so there was that visibility. What I found was, and today is a little different, but direct mail marketing wasn't working for colleagues. A lot of them tried it, and because we're a people business and a service business, I think people want referrals. Mm-hmm. So I think if you sort of step back from what's the best way to market, it's first know what your niche is, know what you want to do, know who you want your clients to be, and then I think it's getting that word out there via others. And certainly today, being active on Twitter with the Event Props hashtag, there are groups on Facebook and LinkedIn, and we've got the Focus Forum. All of those things allow people to see you. What do you think in today's world?
Exactly. I mean, basically, when we started in 1994, which that would be 18 years ago, it was me, myself, and I. You can imagine. You can imagine how staff meetings were, especially when we disagreed on something. I was involved with my local MPI chapter and members of various other associations within the industry, and I found that my volunteer involvement was probably the best way to market myself. I quickly learned, for example, working on people with committees who I would be comfortable working with in a client-vendor relationship, and that was key. I was also helped by the fact that I had a hotel sales background, and I did that, but I did not do active selling, and still to this day we do more passive selling. It's really, this is a relationship, and I think, as you said, a people business, and almost all of our clients come either directly or by way of referral, or even third, sometimes fourth party. We can trace it back to our involvement in the various associations.
And as a receiver of marketing, I think that you're absolutely right. I mean, I rely on recommendations, and when you work with people on committees or when friends refer you, where you have a baseline level of confidence and ability to do things.
I was just in a board meeting for another association board that I'm involved on, and one of my board members who's on the supplier side, served with a board member on the buyer side, had never been able to get in to see her. Well, once they served together, they were able to develop a relationship.
It's very important.
And I think the last thing is using LinkedIn, because a lot of people do searches, and that's a great way to get a referral and for people to just find you. And of course, it goes back to the knowing what your niche is and making sure that's what you want to accept. And the last thing I think is, too, it's the the old miracle on 34th Street, which is if it's not the right business for you, refer somebody else who can do it well, and then what you get is a possible referral back.
Absolutely, it all comes back full circle.
Great, thank you. Here's one we talked about before the broadcast. It's a kind of a perennial question. Attrition. How do you put that in contracts? What do you do? I was talking with Joan, and I said, just telling people not to worry about it. But I guess that is not an option with attrition.
I'll start, and then Mary Beth, you want to jump in on this? Just a little bit of my background. I testify in the industry as an expert witness in legal cases, and I happen to love contracts. I don't think anybody likes talking attrition. I think that we all try to quote, get out of it. And I think that what we have to see from the planner side and organization side is it's fair and it's legal. If there is no attrition clause in your contract, it means you're responsible for everything legally. So the smarter thing is to negotiate what you think, and knowing your group, what you think you can pay if you don't meet your obligations. And that's on food and beverage, on sleeping rooms, on ancillary revenue, whatever it is that they're suggesting. Mary Beth, what about?
Yeah, I agree entirely with what you're saying. I think it's so important to know your group. You know what they're going to do, for the most part. I mean, there's always those situations where you have no control. But if you know your group and you can negotiate and be perfectly fair back and forth, I think the most important part of it is that you have to be fair on both sides.
Yes.
You do. You have to be fair to the property.
Right.
You have to be fair to yourself. You have to find some middle ground. And a lot of it is going to depend on a lot of scenarios.
Right, exactly.
How is the hotel doing overall? Are they going to be able to resell your rooms? It's really a juggling act and a big gamble sometimes, as long as you're protected contractually in your contract.
Well, and I think two things on what you said, and it's even what you said early on about marketing, about having been in the hotel business. I wasn't, but in my early part of my career, I took time, and Mary Beth and I were both on the Meetings and Exposition Section Council for ASAE, and we had an opportunity to be involved with the training that ASAE did, the hotel operations program. So I think that for any planner, no matter how veteran they are, if they've never spent time in a hotel understanding how hotels make money and what their costs are, then I don't think they can understand attrition or any part of negotiation. So I think that's a big part of that, balancing it by understanding it.
Exactly.
I mean, as a third-party meeting management firm, we have a responsibility to educate our clients that a hotel and any other vendor, but I mean around hotels right now, they're a business too. They have margins to make. They have salaries to pay. They have owners to satisfy. And that again, I think, is one of the things that I bring from coming from the hotel side.
It's really interesting. I go to a lot of these association events, meetings industry association events, and I know one guy out there, I give a shout out to Michael Dominguez from Lowe's, gives a great speech on sort of the hotel side and how planners can understand their revenue streams, what you can negotiate with, what is just not worth it to them in the end to negotiate for.
And building too on what Mary Beth said about being fair, and a plug for the Meetings Focus Live. Kelly Bagnall, who's an industry attorney, and I are going to do a session on ethical negotiations, because all of this plays in. It's if you want to do good business, and I think this is something that I would feel grateful to have learned early on. It's really understanding the sides, and it's really understanding how the business works, explaining how your business works, and really being fair.
And being able to communicate that to your client, because that can be a catch. That can be the difficult part.
Nobody wants to pay attrition.
No, the end user client doesn't understand the goods, the bads. They just understand, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to come up with this money.
And I can imagine even people in the organization might not understand attrition. So the CEO, I'm sure the CFO does, but the CEO might not think it's that big a deal to be a little loosey-goosey on
One
that.
quick resource for if people who are tuned in don't know this. The Convention Industry Organization, so it's conventionindustry.org, has APEX, and in the APEX standards is a report by the contracts panel. If you don't understand the language, if you go through that, it'll talk about attrition, it'll explain what all of this means, and that to me is a great way to learn and understand more about why.
Absolutely.
Great. Well, thanks for that resource. Okay, we've tackled a couple questions from our audience, and we'll get to some more a little later on. But let's start off with our esteemed panel's tips. Joan, what in your years of doing this, what stands out in your head?
You know, we all made lists of things that we thought were important, and I think that for me, when I look back, it really was to be more aware, and I'll get into a couple specifics. We're taught certain things about meeting and planning when we all get into it. I think that one thing happens is that we tend to panic when things go wrong. Mm-hmm. And I think that panic happens because we're not prepared. We don't do a crisis plan. Yeah. I'm heavy into dealing with risk management, and I think that understanding and looking at what the risks can be, everything from what I call paper cuts, like the maybe a speaker's a no-show. Mm-hmm. You can prepare for that. That's a paper cut. A disaster comes when a tsunami is facing the city you're in, or an earthquake, or a hurricane, or something that could be catastrophic to the people who are there. So to me, the thing that I learned really quickly was to have a good plan about everything that could happen. That will save not only people and money, it'll save you as an individual.
Mm-hmm. And I know, just coincidentally, we're doing our meetings market trend survey. I just wrapped that up before I left the office, and it always is surprising to me. Every year we ask about, do you have a contingency plan? And it always surprises me that so many people don't. We even have a column on it in there.
What's a contingency plan?
What's a contingency
plan? Never got that question. I have.
So, and I'm sure you guys have put a lot of thought into that also.
Well, yeah, on a lot of different levels.
Yeah.
We have it internally, for going to a meeting, it's 8,000 people or between 8 and 10,000 people. When they get there, how do you deal with issues on site? But even prior to that, if there is what you're saying, like a hurricane, a snowstorm, whatever, what they have to do to communicate, take care of all their needs, whether on the road, because you're like in an airport. What do you do now? What do I do about my session? What do I do? And then internally we have an emergency plan, so the staff knows exactly what to do, who to contact, and there's not a lot of confusion along the line. And we have scripts that we hand out, so if people have to deal with any kind of issue on site, they can, people who don't do this all the time, we bring 45 staff, internal staff, and they do a lot of different things besides planning. And so they have an idea of how to break down and how to handle situations.
And then likewise, making sure the facility has their contingency plan on their backup plan and disaster plan, and that they've done essentially a quote-unquote fire drill. They've done a run-through of it relatively recently to make sure things still work.
And one other, well, actually I could probably do about an hour on this, yes. But one other thing I was thinking about, and it's because I just had this experience, that we forget the food and beverage risk, and food and beverage is such a big part of everything we do, and it's the one thing that people fetch about as much as they do temperature. And so I think it's not only looking at how fabulous the food's going to be, but how safe it's going to be, both from the standpoint of temperature of the food, not having things that people are allergic to, and no cross-contamination, so the spatula that picks up the stuff with nuts is not now going to pick up the stuff without nuts.
Sure.
Exactly.
So that you really pay attention to what will keep people healthy and safe, and thus eliminate, or at least cut down the amount of risk you have individually and your organization has.
And one thing that's always stood out to me, and it's probably from the first time I heard you speak, if you can just take away one thing. I know you always start off your sessions by announcing.
Emergency exit.
Yeah, here's the emergency exit.
Can you hold this, please?
Oh, she's going to do it.
I'm going to do it.
Okay.
Okay, so I do my flight attendant routine. It's like, here are the emergency exits, and in the event of an emergency, this is where we go, this is how we go. And to me, to not start every session with that is it's not doing our duty as people who are responsible for other people. Thank you.
I'm going to get you an oxygen mask and a seat belt for you to do your demo the next trip I'm on.
That would be really
little vest.
People do the best. Yes.
Thanks. Charles, what knowledge do you have to share with our audience today?
Well, we've covered a few of them. I think one of them is, I always say, remember, if it isn't in writing, it doesn't exist. And this goes back to contracts. And even in the case of, not that this ever has happened to any of us, but if something is perchance missed in a contract, you can refer back to emails sometimes and use that to your advantage as well. And I found that emails have saved us a lot of times if something just got missed in a contract.
Right.
So that's one. I already talked about the hotel and the other vendors of business too, and educating our clients. But again, that's key. Our clients really need to know that they're not the bad guys. Our vendors are not the bad guys. Our vendors are an integral part of the team, and we could not do our meetings without them. One of my favorite things is our company ethics policy is very, very simple. It has to pass 2 tests. Could I tell my mother about it? Mm-hmm. And if I do it, whatever it is, can I sleep at night?
Of course, if your mother's like Bonnie and Bunny and Clyde,
exactly.
maybe a problem.
That's true. Yeah. And my mother's pretty ethical and sweet. But I got, or you can always say, how would you feel if it was published in the New York Times?
Right.
Yeah. And if it doesn't pass those tests, we don't do it. Now, there are some times when there are great things, you have to sleep on it overnight, and if you wake up the next morning and it still doesn't pass those tests, then we simply don't do it. Everything is disclosed. All of our clients and vendors know how everyone is being compensated, and that's just how we operate from an ethical standpoint in our company.
And I think those who are part of this, who are members of any of the CIC member organizations, PCMA, MPI, ASAE, site, everybody has a code of ethics. And if you haven't read it lately, you may want to go back and do so, as well as your own company's code of ethics, because our industry presents a lot of carrots as offers. And I think we have to be very careful as planners about what we take and what that represents and how we represent ourselves and our organizations.
And I think particularly when you're starting out in this business, you don't have guidelines. You don't know,
you don't know
what's good and
right.
what's bad
Stuff's
because it's
offered, so
overwhelming.
And a lot of people just sort of happen into the job. All of a sudden they're a meeting planner or a meeting professional.
And they're getting 200,000 points to book, and that's a no-no. And they're just in my opinion, and they're getting gifts, and they're going to trade shows where an iPad is being drawn, and they don't know if it belongs to them or to the company, and that's something they need to find out.
Yeah, one of our clients, I understand recently, they now have like many do, but a limit, a dollar limit on things because they were getting offered too many iPads. iPads seem to be over the past couple of years. Everybody wants one. It was the gift du jour toward the end of the year when vendor companies had a lot of budget to spend.
Right.
It's true.
Right.
And especially if you're a planner of like a pharmaceutical meetings. And there's just new regulations that came out on that too.
Right.
I couldn't imagine navigating those. You can't even give a luggage tag or a pen.
Oh no, we do some association meetings but are related to pharma, and a lot of the sponsorships that we used to receive now have got to get very creative with what we do.
Well, great. Maribeth, how about some pearls of wisdom from your vast...
I'll try on pearls. Well, one thing I think, and it's come up a couple of times when we were talking about various aspects of the business that we have to explain, you have to be able to explain what you do in a very concise what everybody calls an elevator speech, because you're interacting with a lot of different people. I work in an association, I work with academics who don't really understand totally what I do or what my staff does. So to be able to convey that to them and to be able to convey it to other members of the staff or outside suppliers, because they don't, the suppliers that I use don't necessarily understand what my constituency does. So to be able to talk back and forth and have this short, concise talk that gives people the elements of what you do and what the people that you represent do, I think that's really important. And back and forth. And I also think that when for those of you who are just starting out, to have an idea of where you might want to go or things you might want to try, because if you don't have a map, you don't get to your ultimate destination. So it doesn't mean the map can't change, it can, but to have some goals along the way or ideas of where you'd like to go and try to follow them and think about your career. Don't just rely on falling into stuff and then you're in it and you hate what you're doing. So to really think about how you want your career direction to go.
And I think that also goes back, Charles, about the marketing piece about being involved in an organization.
Right.
Because now it's learning from others, and my career has sort of gone in some really interesting directions and taken some neat turns, and it's because I've been exposed to people in the industry organizations outside them, with the ability now to use social network in our industry. It's heaven. I mean, it's heaven. To be able to have the conversation and say, oh my, I never thought of that. Now I can use that for my meeting. I can look at that for my career, and that's a big deal. I want to add one thing to what you said about when you're starting out. I want everybody, other than contingency, I have a lot of lists. But what I'd love is for everybody to learn to take improvisation classes. Because a lot of what we do, you have to think on your feet. It's all improv.
Right.
It's what my friend Izzy Gazelle, who teaches improv, says, unless you wake up in the morning with a script next to your bed, that's everything that everybody's going to say and do, and you're going to say and do, you're doing improv anyway.
You mean you don't?
Right.
It's good for life, right?
It is
for your life.
Yeah. And I think especially when you're faced on site with a situation, when you're in the process of planning and somebody asks you a question, you don't have to be funny when you do it. Improv isn't always funny, but it's at least being able to think on your feet.
Yeah, sure. And Maribeth, one thing you mentioned as well, I have a lot of involvement with a lot of the student programs, and every time I get up there when I speak to them and facilitate, I say, you don't know how lucky you guys are. Yeah. When I was coming along, we did not have this. We had to create our own roadmap, and here we have a roadmap with at least the basic framework, knowing that you're going to deviate. There'll be some bumps in the road, you'll take some twists and some turns, but you have a map, and that exists today, and it didn't exist when all of us came along.
It didn't.
Exactly. Yeah, we were dancing as fast as
Trial
we could.
Trial by fire.
And we were learning from each other.
Yeah.
I mean, we really were.
Oh, absolutely.
We were sharing information, and we had that opportunity, which we do now.
Right.
And I noticed in some of your notes, you also mentioned, this is it can be a stressful business. You have a lot of people meeting. There's a lot of stuff riding on the meeting. People get frazzled. Their nerves get frazzled. How do you sort of handle those sort of alarming situations? I mean, you guys have to be the beacons of coolness, right?
Yeah.
When everything else is falling apart, you've got to be there in the middle, right?
I just came off my annual, so I'm a beacon.
So
I am a beacon. But I think you just have to pause. You do have to take a breath, because if you react immediately, it's not a good thing. You're reacting from emotion. If you take a breath, I know it sounds like very basic and kind of mundane, but it gives you that space of time to kind of collect yourself and to be calm. It brings oxygen into your body, and, has a physical effect, and you just have the time to pause and answer in a nice way rather than rip somebody's face off.
And that builds on the whole improv thing, because one of my favorite improv exercises is yes and to do that. And this is a great tip for any of you who are currently about to go into a meeting with somebody where you're going to be challenged. When somebody challenges you, like, well, that shouldn't have happened this way, and what you say is, yes, that shouldn't have happened this way, and then you give the response. And what that does is when the minute you say but, you put up a wall, and then when you say and, it says, here's how I'm going to fix it.
Right.
So I think it's the tools of communication.
And also you've acknowledged that yes, this is a problem. You're right. And it puts the conversation on a whole different level.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I say make sure, as the planner, and that your team get lots of rest, get lots of exercise. This morning,
wear comfortable shoes.
Wear comfortable shoes, which I'm doing now. My
a
on-site
lot
shoes.
A lot of water.
I managed to go to the gym this morning, and I had 20 minutes on the bike. I did some stretches, and that's got my energy flowing for the rest of the day.
Right.
And I don't know how you do it. I mean, Charles is constantly on the road.
And he's international travel.
International, Asia. You're on our content advisory board with Joan. You're on probably a million other boards and associations.
I make sure that I get rest and exercise.
Yeah.
I've learned how to sleep on a plane over the years. Hopefully I'm in the correct seat on a plane so I can sleep properly as well.
You wake up in the right destination. Right?
Yeah, this time it did take me about a week to get over my jet lag. I was gone for 2 weeks. But again, just take care of yourself. Know your limits and respect them. Avoid a lot of alcohol when you're on site, except for me. It's that one glass of wine that I've earned at the end of the day. Lying down. So.
And just one more point to that, because I'm an I on Myers-Briggs, which is an introvert, and I get exhausted by being around a lot of people. And when we're on site, it doesn't matter what you want to do, you're around a lot of people all the time.
Right.
If you even need 5 minutes in the bathroom
Yeah.
with your feet up. If you're on a radio, we always say we're going to the Westinghouse booth or something like that. That wasn't a commercial. I just, are they still in business?
They gave you
Anyway,
a
so placement, right? So I just go in even for 5 minutes and put my feet up on the door, and I'm there alone.
Yeah.
And for me as an introvert, I have to have that, and I think that people need to know their limits. You can't do everything.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Go to the conference office, kick whatever's there, and scream for a minute.
Right.
Take a deep breath and walk out.
I make friends with convention services because convention services is, and in fact, that's what ESPA is, event specialists. Oh, I keep getting it wrong. Professionals Association.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that when you have that friend on site, and the person who's backing you up and is making sure the hotel or the convention center does what they need to do, they're also your ally. And I found their offices a better place
Great
to go
place to
because
hide.
you can say anything you want in there.
Right.
And they're often, they're really good to you. I think some of my best friends are people I've known for almost 40 years from convention
Same
services.
here. The convention services person, the DMC operations rep, if you have one on site, and the concierge, quite frankly, your best friends.
Yeah. And I suppose you can just scream into a pillow if none of that works.
Oh, that's
much.
true. You could.
Never done that.
I travel with a small stuffed animal who's my friend at night. He's been featured. I've had him forever, and for about 30 years. And he's my neck pillow. He's my everything at night. Okay, so I confess. My name's Joe, and I travel with a stuffed animal.
Well, let's go back to some audience questions, if that's okay with you guys. We have one from Kit. Asking about providing some tips or techniques for meeting planners to convince organizational stakeholders about the value of face-to-face meetings. In your experience, what would be your tips for going to the C-level people?
Well, I think first of all, there's now good research. And in fact, at PCMA, they're doing some great sessions on how brains react to face-to-face versus virtual.
Right.
And I think looking at that research and having that ability to bring that information back. I think it's also knowing your audience. And what I'm seeing is that more and more audiences really do want face-to-face. And in fact, here's something interesting. When I talked with the students the other day, everybody's saying that Gen Y, their generation, is the one that doesn't want anything face-to-face. They want to do, all they're going to do is text. They're going to do everything virtual.
Right.
They don't want to at all. In fact, when I asked them about their virtual classes, they said, oh, no. We don't even like learning from textbooks online.
Yeah.
So I think we have to know our audiences. I think people have gone to virtual and hybrid partly to engage other audience members, which I think is great. It's exactly what we're doing today.
Exactly.
And I think they've done it because they think it's cheaper. In the long run, it may not be. If we lose this face-to-face and ability to interact, it doesn't give the same value, especially for associations, of that membership. So I think you have to really do some good research into what your audience likes, how they behave, and what they need. What are you both seeing?
I think for some virtual part of meetings and throughout the year, it's good. It keeps community together. It develops things. But you can't beat running into people accidentally. And those connections and reconnections that you make. I ran into two people on the way here that I haven't seen in a couple of years. And, you catch up and you talk. What are you doing? What are you going to do? And I think you will never get with the virtual.
Well, and I think it's the reason that we have there's tonight there's a tweet up so that all the people who are on various like event profs and the PCMA hashtag for the meeting are all getting together face to face.
Right.
So I think that
tweeting across the table.
Maybe. But I think that the issue of trying to convince an organization that it's not going to go. I think people have to look more at hybrid, which is what they're doing at PCMA. And not going one or the other. I think that everybody has different time and cost constraints, and that's how you manage it.
And I've even gone to the Virtual Edge Summit before, and people don't realize, they think, oh, I'm going to save a lot of money doing this, but essentially you're planning two meetings at the same time.
Yes, you are.
It's like parallel tracks.
It just adds more work, but But I have to say, I think the hybrid meetings are the way to go. Like you said, Maribeth, once in a while to do just the virtual meeting. I mean, it's fine. It's what they used to do on some of the science fiction shows where they would be talking with the admiral there. But
well, there are reasons to do
there are
it.
reasons to do it. And I've had speakers piped in via Skype as well.
Right.
Not necessarily by design. Originally, it was by emergency. The speaker couldn't get there, but now it's by design sometimes. But we're social animals, folks. I mean, let's face it. You can't. I can't give Joan a hug over the phone as much as I would like to sometimes. I mean, we need to be with each other.
The day that I got here, my room wasn't ready at the hotel, so I was sitting in the lobby, and I had the most amazing 2-hour serendipitous conversation with Nancy Zavada, who writes for Meetings Focus
also
on
on
green,
our,
and writes about green and blogs about green and other sustainability issues. And we would not have had that time to connect, nor would I have known she was staying there. And so, and then Denise Settle, who's with a convention bureau, joined us. So it was an amazingly rich conversation that happened because we were face to face.
Sure. And even.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to, even our attendees, clearly the same thing. I mean,
Yes.
Not all of our groups may be huggy. I mean, you'd be surprised the ones that are that you wouldn't think are, but no, they need to see each other interact.
Right.
Then I know that with our group, there is a certain element within it who likes to tweet, and what they've been tweeting, they were tweeting a lot about sessions last year, and so people they were tweeting with who weren't there say, next year, I really have to come. If this is what, if this direction the MLA is going, I want to be there.
Right.
So it's, it's really cross-fertilization.
It can drive attendance.
Oh,
That's a surprising
yes.
thing to me.
Drives attendance for the following year.
Yeah.
Say, oh, look what I missed.
And it keeps the whole virtual aspect keeps people engaged year round. And for an organization, what it does is allow you to see what the topics are and the interests are, and what you need to build professional development, either face to face or virtual around. Have articles about. And it allows people to really have that connection. And exactly what Mary Beth said, that you want to see them next year. You had this great. I've had so many tweets in the last 2 weeks from people that I only know from Twitter, and they're just can't wait to see me here. How are we going to meet? So you do that. It's great.
Great. Let's take another one, and this is a very general one. I could use some tips from you guys on this. You're planning all these meetings. How do you stay organized?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
I don't know. I'll turn to my colleague. I'm a right-brain person. So it's a very hard thing for me. I want tips too.
I'm sort of comfortable in chaos sometimes.
Yeah, I am too.
Yeah.
Well, yours is fresh in your mind since you just did your annual meeting, right?
What?
So, yeah, you're one.
Yeah.
So.
I just came off my annual meeting, so it is a little bit of chaos. I mean, I think it's a hybrid element. There's we try to do as much organizing. I try to do as much organizing beforehand so that the routine stuff you're not like looking for every single thing. And then that allows you to deal with chaos. But I think you have to be able to deal with chaos. There is no perfect organization. Not for what we do. You're dealing with people, places, and things that change on a dime sometimes.
In the old days, a lot of us used binders. What do you use now to what tools to be organized?
Go ahead.
I myself do not use binders as much. I use electronic. I use notepads to have things. I mean, notepads meaning notebooks. Not an iPad, but those types of things. I'm stumbling on what exactly I would call it. What do you call it? A smart pad.
Tablets.
Thank you. That was the tablet word was eluding me. Yeah, you win the prize. Tablets. So we use those, and I also, I make sure that I use Outlook. So I have everything has its own folder. If I'm not ready to deal with it, it'll sit in my inbox because my inbox is also my to-do list. But I will, if it's not ready to deal with it yet, I'll move it over into the respective conference folder where it belongs.
Right.
And again, it's just a matter of juggling oranges, essentially, is what we're doing. I mean, you just deal with it. And it is what it is. You take some time. Take your Outlook into offline mode a couple of times a day and go through there and clean up your email, sort it by subject, sort it by last name, so you know who it comes from. And
always a good thing.
As opposed to having it just by date. And then you can deal with that, and you can get the bar from a little box back to a bar again.
I always look up to people who really can wrangle their inbox on Outlook. I mean, how they have them going into special folders, how they know how to keep track of it, who's come, who to talk to, who to put off until tomorrow to answer.
That is far too left brain for me.
I
don't
think anybody does it perfectly, though.
Yeah.
No. Everyone has their own system, and the system works for the individual person based on their personalities and skills.
But I think the advantage of tablets now is that binders that we used to be able to carry around. We just have on this little
Yeah.
tablet. So
And I think it's if you're not sure, that I know that Corbin Ball, which is corbinball.com,
Great
and others,
resource, by
great
the way.
resource,
Yeah.
with having timelines, because even if you don't, it's sort of, I think for a lot of people who are new, you don't even know where to start. You're like, what do I do first? So getting that timeline, understanding what you have to put into it, starting from that, asking colleagues. One of the things I learned early on in my life, and after I moved to DC and became a professional planner, was to ask questions when I didn't know. There's nothing wrong with that. I went to the first hotel I had worked with in DC, and I just said, I'm new here. I need to know everything that you can tell me, and so just tell me. And that way you're getting information and you're showing that you're open and you don't know everything, because nobody knows everything.
Yeah.
And I think you have to continue to do that.
Oh,
because with the
Things change,
technology and
technology
everything,
change.
you just don't know everything.
Which is why we're obviously at PCMA and we go to other programs,
Sure.
because we have to stay up on things.
And I should throw in a pitch for our Meetings Focus Live programs. I hear one of our speakers is having a birthday, I think.
If you go to the May one, you can celebrate my big birthday. So we'll be in
what
Colorado.
day is that?
May 7th.
Where?
I forget the property name. I'm so embarrassed. In Colorado Springs.
In Colorado Springs, yeah. So check that out on our website, meetingsfocus.com. You can find all our live events there, and Joan will be sharing some of her knowledge, and we appreciate that. Any other tips we can share?
I want to just one other tip that sort of builds on Mary Beth's, and that is on constantly learning.
Right.
One of the things I think planners in general and some suppliers are afraid of are contracts.
Oh, sure.
And I happen to really love contracts. I would rather negotiate contracts than do a lot of other things.
Yeah.
And I think that what planners have to do is just start reading through them and being curious, and the same way you'd look up a word you didn't know in a book you're reading, look up to see what you don't understand. Use Meetings Focus Forum and come in and say, I'm reading this contract and there's this clause, I don't get it, somebody explain it. And we will explain it.
Yeah, definitely. Meetings Focus Forum, and Joan is sitting in there most all the day, and you can ask any question of her, and you'll get a good answer from her or a variety of
I
other
try to
people.
contribute regularly when I can as well.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, great. Anyone else have anything to share?
We got time for another quick?
Yeah, sure.
I know we touched on DMCs, but I do a lot of work with DMCs. I just wanted to say the importance of the DMC system, especially when you're going into an area that is.
Say what a DMC is.
I'm sorry. DMC doesn't. Yeah, we speak in code, as many of you
It's
know.
a DMO now.
DMO, right?
DMO.
Destination Management Company, and I use them not only in foreign countries but in other destinations within North America that I may not know. And they help me with things that I never thought that I would need to know, such as if someone loses a passport, they know who to call. Do I know who? No, I don't. If the order has been messed up on something, they know how to fix it immediately. And again, I'm a very strong proponent of that. So that's one of my tips.
Well, great. Well, thanks for joining us today. I really learned
Thanks
a
for
lot.
having
This
us.
was fun.
It's been great.
And enjoy the
Yeah,
rest
great
of the
time.
conference.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tyler.
And we're going to do a quick changeover now and get a couple other folks in here. I wish you could see the room here. There's just all sorts of stuff going on in the PSAV Inspiration Cafe. All sorts of equipment, big globos and projection stuff happening. They have iPads around. So, if you happen to be at the conference, make sure to come in here and check it out. It's up on the second level. And I also should maybe take care of some more housekeeping. I did mention our Meetings Focus Live programs. We had a bunch of those last year. They turned out to be very successful. It's a hosted buyer program, so you'll get to come in and get some great industry-leading education, meet key suppliers in the destinations you're thinking about planning in. So let me just read out some of the dates and locations of that. May 6th through 8th in Colorado Springs, also known as Joan Eisenstadt's birthday. So feel free to bring some cake or a present or two. We have June 3 to 5 in Fort Lauderdale, August 5 to 7 in Charlotte, and We have June 24th, my birthday, to 26th in Huntington Beach. Maybe I'll get some cupcakes or cake too. August 29th to 31st in Lake Tahoe, California. And August 26th to 28th in Valley Forge. So go to our website, www.meetingsfocus.com, and you can find out more details about the programs and register to attend. So meetingsfocus.com, check out our Meetings Focus live events there. And I guess we're ready to introduce a couple more of our guests here. We first of all, right on my left, we have Greg Van Dyke, the Senior Vice President of Marketing for PSAV. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
And you guys are broadcasting all day here, right?
Yeah, we're excited. This has been a great convening leaders. It's always such a great way to find out about technology, and this is our Inspiration Cafe. And so for the virtual audience, we're sort of going around and broadcasting throughout the day. So the best way to find us, if you have a few moments later on, is to go to psav.com. And in our yellow banner on the bottom right-hand corner, you'll be able to click on the stream. So we hope to see you all a little bit later on today.
And I think Charles is even coming by later on.
I believe so. So we have some repeat versions. So we look forward to it. We have a lot of great...
He's moonlighting.
Yeah. Costs big money for these people.
I know.
So.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I'll definitely check it out. I want to go check it out, too, once I finish today. And also, to Greg's left, we have Bill McMillan, the Senior Sales Director at Visit Charlotte. Thanks for joining us.
No, it's my pleasure. Happy to be here.
And let me kick it off with a question for you. What's been going on in Charlotte lately? Any big things happening over the last year?
Well, we're very fortunate that over the last roughly 18 months we've had 4 new museums that have come out of the ground and opened since May of 2010. Which is and they're all within about a half block of our convention center.
Yeah.
So that has really helped magnify and enhance our convention package, in addition to the hotels and whatnot around there. In addition, one of those venues is our NASCAR Hall of Fame, which is part of our convention center expansion. Includes a 40,000 square foot new ballroom, which has been a fantastic addition for those groups that need that extra plenary space.
And I imagine you're really ramping up because you have the Democratic National Convention coming to town. Right?
Ramping up could be, you could say that. Yeah. It's a huge convention for any city to host, and a city the size of Charlotte fits it very, very well. And the DNC will take over our city in a lot of different ways.
Sure.
A lot of details still need to be ironed out as to how business is going to work during that time frame, and we're really excited about it. But one of the neat things about it, kind of a spin-off benefit to it, is that folks are taking another look at us now. They'd say, hey, well, if you can host the Democratic National Convention, we need to take another look at Charlotte for our meeting destination.
And I suppose, a lot of people will be using a lot of unique venues for different parties and stuff in Charlotte during the Democratic National Convention. What sort of unique venues do you guys have there? People might be.
Well, I mentioned the NASCAR Hall of Fame, which is connected to our convention center and is very convenient and can host events for up to 2,500 people. But we really are very fortunate, and a few years ago, right on the outskirts of Charlotte, we built a world-class, really one-of-a-kind in the world, outdoor facility called the U.S. National Whitewater Center. Our Olympic team trains there and that type of thing, but it's a artificial whitewater rafting course that has so much more and can accommodate groups up to 5,000. We've had some very successful large groups out there doing all types of ropes courses and all kinds of strenuous things I try to stay away from as much as I can.
I hear you. And I suppose this is not the case when the DNC is going to be in town, but how about value dates?
Yeah, it's our traditional dates are that are if you would call them value dates are summertime. Really, weekends in Charlotte are a little bit slower. Our business transient demand is very high during the year, and so I think that weekends and summers are typically the times to find best dates in Charlotte.
Great.
I was just going to chime in. The PCMA board had a meeting in Charlotte,
and
we had a chance to see the NASCAR facility, and that is beyond a great facility. It's a fun environment, and so it's a neat, unique environment, along with the Duke Mansion. So anyway, it's a great location. We had a great time there.
Well, I'm glad you did. Thanks for coming.
Well, and speaking of unique environments, you guys really got a great your Inspiration Cafe here. You got a lot of stuff going on, flying around. So wow, tell folks what you're up to here.
I think the one thing Convening Leaders does really well is it's the best way to kick the year off for executive level education. and more of that education is focusing on technology. So what we're showing around here is all the different forms of technology that people can use to help improve their meeting experience. And so we have some areas sort of focused on the audience interactivity, so what's going on in terms of the world of mobile applications, what's going on in the world of how can you use your own personal devices to interact with your audiences. Great opportunities to have much more dynamic meetings to engage your audiences. Lighting, creative. We've been putting out movie festivals for people, so we actually won some Telly Awards for some of our movies we put out. So some neat ways for you to use technology just to make that little difference in your meetings. So,
and how do planners? There's so much of it out there. It's so expensive. How do planners kind of cut to the chase to figure out what's going to make a difference to their bottom line?
You know, it's funny. The biggest question I get from planners right now is, all right, you keep asking me to spend more money on HD or a bigger screen, and why should I do it? Beyond the fact that it looks cool, why should I do it? So we actually just came out with a research project, and we worked with a company called Brain Strength to really help document and to help educate planners on the whole adult learning environment. So anyone who watched John Medina and the Brain Rules this morning from the general session, and John spoke about some of those basic rules for how, well, I can't remember the way he put it, but people don't like boring things.
Sure.
So beyond the boring, we can actually have some statistics that show how adult learning and retention is enhanced by sound, by graphics, by music, and by lighting. So it's a fascinating research project. You can go to PSAV.com and download the white paper.
Okay.
But our whole point with planners is trying to help them understand that a larger screen with blended image technology really does keep the audience focused on the person, on the speaker, and will help them deliver that message. So when you figure out all the money you spend to get people to a destination, to invest in a hotel, to put them up, the food and beverage, the AV actually isn't that much. And so it's so critical, though, to have that effective meeting. So we're helping to sort of document that for folks.
And technology in the meetings industry has sort of developed in what you said before was a very fragmented basis. Tell us more about that.
You know, what's funny is if you think about, for the planners in the audience, the way you sort of worked with your vendors, it used to be that everyone had a very specialized role in technology, and so you worked with your person for a call to abstracts or your speaker management system, and somebody else who did your housing, someone else for your registration, someone else for your capturing the content of your meeting, someone else did your website and your hosting. So everyone was very isolated, and you soon found that some of those vendors were better than other vendors.
Yeah.
And so you start asking them to do a little bit more. So now there's all this overlap. And now in this today's integrated dynamic world, and sort of what you're seeing right now is, while we're doing essentially the live conversation and the AV here, we're also streaming it and we're capturing it. So now from an integrated process, you can do this all at once.
Sure.
And why make your attendees have 3 different passwords and user IDs for all that? So one of the systems we're showing here is our Content One, our content management system. And so for the larger association planners, you can actually have an integrated system from abstract submission, the call to abstracts, through to session scheduling, through to the virtual speaker ready room, through to on-site management, through to the AV on-site, through to capture, to post-show streaming, all in one integrated stream.
Wow.
So it's a great way to, and each time, by the way, look at Apple.
Yeah.
It's so easy on Apple because they just made the user experience simple. So the challenge for all of us is, when we're doing our meetings, are we making sure that we're keeping the user experience simple for the meeting attendee?
I think that is so critical. And, looking at Steve Jobs and some of, it's all very simple. I just want one button. Yeah. And through that one button, I mean, it's almost like a whole company was built just on elegance and simplicity of technology.
If I could throw one more thing out there, when you're working at with all these wonderful hotel locations, if you find locations where PSV is also in-house, one of the real benefits is, and we work with some great hotel partners but we've also expanded our services to include rigging and high-speed internet access. So again, our goal is from push a single button, make a single phone call to us, and we'll take care of everything from soup to nuts for your technology experience.
Great. And then what's coming down the pike just in technology for the meetings industry? What are you seeing out there?
Everyone, we have as part of our team at CES right now, and so CES is sort of for the audiovisual people, it's your toys. I mean, it's fun to go look at all the technology, and I think though it's actually some of the basics are going on right now is in terms of this whole digital hybrid world. How do we keep making information digitized and available for you? So we actually saw people walking around our booth or outside who are watching this right now on their mobile phones. Because if you have to be somewhere, you're not limited to being in the room anymore. So people have so many things they have to. So that I think is the biggest technology, is that we're untethering your need to be there.
Right.
And you still want face-to-face, but maybe face-to-face is I'm going to delay watching this session till later so I can have a meeting for a client. Or we're changing that dynamic. And also between the mobile applications for a website, or mobile applications for meetings, you can really change your whole meeting design. So we have some real cool ways for you. If you start way up front with meeting design, you can use technology to really get a better ROI out of your meetings. And that's the focus. There's a lot of pressure on cost, and we got to make sure when we spend the money on technology, you get a better meeting result because of it.
Well, and then thank you for your technology for helping us do this. This is the second broadcast we've done, and I really enjoy it, and I really thank you guys tremendously for that.
Yep, absolutely.
And thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Yep, thank you very much.
And have a good rest of the show.
All right, bye now.
Thanks for joining us. And stay tuned. We're going to, for my tweets on PCMA and all the news we're getting here, and have a great rest of the day. Thank you for joining us.